I'm nominating Mr. Daryl Wakeham of St. George's Senior School to be my dream maker. My name's Anjan, and as Mr. Wakeham does, I'd like to tell you guys a story today. Just a disclaimer, I'm terrible at telling stories. I mean, I come from the generation where a sentence on Facebook, a line on Twitter, or a 2-minute YouTube video is the longest thing I'll do in a day. And Mr. Wakeham really made a big difference for me if I can even tell a story to you guys for 5 minutes. And I'd like to start from the beginning. So, this last summer, I went to India and volunteered in the Dharvi slums in Mumbai. That is the same slums where Slumdog Millionaire was shot in. And so I started a charity about 2 years ago. I also did an India trip in grade 9. And since then I've raised $18,000 for this charity. So with this last summer I went there with $18,000. And in the slums the problem is they have schools but they don't have teachers. So about 1,000 to 2,000 kids cannot even get an education, which I think is the biggest thing to get out of poverty. So I went there and I hired 4 teachers, and hopefully we'll hire more with the money I raised. And with that, 300 kids were able to go to school. And hopefully this will continue, and I will be able to impact a big difference on the slums in India. But this never would have been possible without Mr. Wakeham. And I say this frankly, none of that would have been possible. So I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, and I lived there until I was 7 years old. I mean, pretty normal, right? And a lot of people grow up in small towns, but I couldn't speak English. Until I was 7 years old, I could only speak Indian languages, and I was stuck in a place, I was stuck in my own body where I couldn't have friends because they couldn't hold a basic conversation. I couldn't even watch TV, I couldn't interact, I couldn't do anything. I was an outsider in my own town, my own country. And frankly, that was quite frightening. And that fear really transcended into rebellion and a nature in me that really shoved that entire Indian side to the right. I said I hated the country, I hated the people, I hated everything about India with a passion. I mean, the culture, the religion, everything about it. And I really just went and said, I'm 100% Canadian. I mean, what does that mean? Hockey, bacon, and maple syrup? But I shoved all my Indian roots, and I didn't go inside. I went out, and I shoved off this entire inner identity of me. And it wasn't until Mr. Wakeham's class that I started to explore it, and I started to understand it, and I started to be comfortable with my real self. So we do something in the class called Revelations, which is people would come up at the beginning of the class and tell a story. It could be about the smallest thing, the smallest observation, the smallest thought. It could be the most thought-provoking thing. It could be that a family member passed away and you want to talk about it. It could be your dreams in life, your goals, what you find troubling about life today. And it was just to share a story. It was to say some emotion. And, well, it seems trivial, stories. Like, that's what you see in movies, that's what you read in a book. But he really made us feel that stories were the most important thing to us. It told us about a potential. It gave us compassion, gave us empathy, and really made us that much stronger in ourselves and that much more confident, which I think is the most important thing. And after that, every week, almost every single day, I was in Mr. Wakeham's office talking to him, just listening to the man, because he doesn't tell you what to do, he tells you stories. And he was telling me about in his childhood, how about he wanted to be the change you want to see, quoting Gandhi, but he couldn't because he was held back by his parents, he was held back by society. And he told me, look, everything in this world was started by people just as smart as you and I. Why can't you go and change it? I wish I could go back and do it. And that one line really exemplified my relationship with Mr. Wakeham. And when I was 8 years old, just as a little aside, my grandma gave me a book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is like the Indian Bible. And pretty much it's a coming of age thing. And I threw it on my shelf saying, I'm never going to read this. It wasn't because I couldn't read it or I wasn't curious. It was because I thought if I read it, I'd be Indian again. I would put that Indian side back onto me. So until I was 17, I left it off. And finally talking to Mr. Wakeham, he said, look, looking into the book is like looking into yourself. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. Lots of people spend their entire lives in it. But I assure you, if you look into it, there will be nothing but good consequences. And I did read it, and ever since that I've been enamored with India. I really want to be the change I want to see, and I've really made a huge difference in the lives of so many people. And this never would have been possible without Mr. Wakeham. I mean, turning a kid who had no idea what his own identity, had no idea what his own culture was, couldn't even speak English, to a guy who's confident, who's willing to go out and make a difference in the world for 300 kids in India, to be able to brave slums. I mean, I can barely stay in my aunt's house, but I stayed in the slums there. Mr. Wakeham truly has made a difference for me, and has truly made a difference for the 300 to 400 people in India, just by the way of him being so kind, being so compassionate, and being so inspiring. And that's why I think Mr. Daryl Wakeham is truly a dream maker.